I can.
So do you have maps?
I have some. Yeah, I have some and I can share them.
Okay. Okay, well, we are live now, so we'll get started. Hey, everyone. We are here, All on the Line, North Carolina. My name is Bree Bro. I'm the digital organizer with All on the Line, North Carolina.
And I am Lake Shupak. I am the North Carolina State Director.
And it has been a few days since our last recap. We've been trying to follow the process really closely as well. We have been following the process really closely, and we've been trying to do kind of a daily recap of what's happened as legislators are drawing the maps in real time. But we had a weekend, and then we had Indigenous Peoples Day on Monday. So it's been a few days since we've had a recap. So let's go over what happened since Friday. Of course, the redistricting committee did not seem to take the day off or celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day. And so, Leica, you were gracious enough to go and follow the process on Monday, and then of course yesterday and today. So maybe you can give a recap of just where are we now in the map drawing process? What's happened over the past few days?
Yeah, so basically we've seen Republican leadership of the committees consistently drawing maps. So they've kind of been like plugging away on both the House legislative maps and the Senate legislative maps, and then drawing a number of congressional maps. So we saw, I think, 3 or 4 congressional maps drawn last week. A couple more got started yesterday, although I think most of those remained unfinished at this point. But yeah, they're just, basically there's probably someone in there at least half of the day drawing something that we're trying to keep track of. So action has kept moving, and like you said, they did not take the day off for Indigenous Peoples Day. They were definitely there on Monday working.
And so we've seen, particularly some of the congressional maps, we've had a few days now with, and they've been really finalizing them, but we kind of had the broad strokes for a couple of days now. So what can we share about kind of what we're seeing? What are some themes that we're seeing in all the maps that the leadership, the chairs of these redistricting committees are drawing?
Yeah, so I mean, I think we're seeing some things that clearly go against what we heard at public hearings. So for instance, both Mecklenburg and Wake counties, which are our 2 biggest counties by population, are being split 3 or even 4 times in the congressional maps that we've seen drafted. Even though both of those counties are very big, they only actually need to be split once for population reasons. So whatever you're doing beyond that, in my mind, is really excessive and not actually serving the interests of people who live there. We've consistently seen congressional maps that create a new seat west of Charlotte, or including Cleveland County, which is where House Speaker Tim Moore lives. And also, like, basically we've heard that he is interested in running for Congress, and to do so because of where all the current Congress members are, there would have to be a new district created kind of for him. And we have seen that district in all the congressional draft maps. There is some kind of district that Tim Moore could plausibly run in. And so we've also seen basically a lot of things that look similar to past maps. So, I mean, I think if you're at all familiar with the maps that we had, say, in 2016, I remember that I lived in Chapel Hill and moved to Raleigh in that time. And I drove through, was in my 4th congressional district, drove through the 5th, and ended up back in the 4th when I moved to Raleigh, which is not close to Chapel Hill. And so we're seeing something really similar where we're basically seeing Orange County, Durham County, and part of Wake County be sort of packed together into a congressional district, just, packing those areas that have a lot of Democratic voters. Another thing that's really significant that we're seeing in a lot of these maps is Congressional District 1, which has a high proportion of Black voters currently, basically being broken up in such a way that the number of Black voters really decreases a lot. And in the past, that district has been, cited as a Voting Rights Act district. So to see that change so drastically, I think a lot of people see that as a really big problem. Another thing is all of these maps in some way split up district that covers Greensboro, High Point, and Winston-Salem. So right now, Greensboro, High Point, and Winston-Salem are all in the same district. All of these maps split up those places. Most of them pair those cities, pair Winston-Salem, High Point, Greensboro with much more rural areas and cut them apart from each other, which is obviously the opposite of what we heard people ask for in the hearings. And then also, most of them, in fact, I think all of them split Cumberland County and don't create a Sandhills district. So one of the biggest things we heard coming out of the public hearings was people wanted a Sandhills district that was centered on Cumberland County that, included like Moore County and Hope County, maybe Robeson County. And we're just not seeing that in any of these maps. In all of the maps that I recall seeing, Cumberland is split in some way where Fayetteville itself is going in one district and the rest of Cumberland County is going in another, which obviously is it's the opposite of what people have asked for. And then also just in terms of proportionality, these congressional maps are not proportional, right? We have very much a 50-50 state in terms of who people vote for. All of these maps have at least 9 and up to 11 safe Republican seats, which is really, really out of whack with where the state is just on a general level. And I do have some quick images of these maps that I will show you. The other thing that I do have a quick image of that I will also show in this is that we do have a map of the Senate, the state legislative, the Senate, the state Senate was sort of finalized today, and I'll show you all a quick image of that as well. So let me go ahead and share my screen. All right, so if you can see this is one of the maps that we saw being finalized today. So finalized means that they have basically, as far as I can tell from watching the feeds, they have equaled out all the populations, and they've gone so far as to upload it into whatever system they're storing these things in, and also get population compactness reports and stuff like that printed out. So basically whatever you would do when you feel like you're really done with a map.
And let's take a second here and just explain what it means to zero out. Okay. So like you're going in and like fine tuning, we watch them, like every district has to be exactly equal, right?
Yeah, with one plus or minus one person. So that's a really, really strict, when it comes to congressional districts, you need to meet that. So obviously it can take a long time to kind of tinker with the edges of that and make sure that that all works out. And so we saw them spend a lot of time today doing that to these congressional maps, just kind of going in, picking and choosing individual census blocks to try to get those numbers perfect. And that's sort of what, when I see you doing that, then I think you're pretty serious about the map, because that takes a lot of time and work that I think you probably wouldn't put into a map that you weren't serious about. So that's what's been done to this map as far as we can tell from watching the feeds. And as you'll see, there's all the things that we've talked about before. So both Guilford and Forsyth are, split into separate districts. They're paired with much more rural areas. So, Greensboro is being paired for the most part with Randolph and Alamance, and Forsyth, like Winston-Salem, part of Forsyth is being paired with like all the way out to like part of Halifax County, which like, I don't know what's going on there. There's this like weird little chunk that's taken off the side of Guilford County and paired all the way out with like Wilkes County. So just, some weird stuff going on there. You can see that Wake County is being split into 3 districts. And actually this sort of southeastern part of Wake County is in a district that goes all the way down to Onslow County. Onslow County is where there are beaches. It is very far away. I don't think people in that area of Wake County feel like they have a lot in common with people who live in Onslow County. And then, you also see like this split that's happening in Mecklenburg, which is split into 4 districts here, which is just extremely excessive. All of those districts are being paired with much more rural areas. So basically the heart is getting cut out of Charlotte here and is being paired with all these districts that going over to like Richmond, much more rural areas in sort of the Sandhills area. Moore County, which is my home county, is being split as well. And like that southern part of Moore County, that's where sort of Southern Pines, Pinehurst, and those places are, like the more populous areas of the county are being split from the other parts of the county. The northern part of Mecklenburg is being taken up here and paired with Iredell and like Lincoln. You know, there's this western part of Mecklenburg that's being paired out with like Gaston, Cleveland, and then all the way out to Polk County, which is basically Mountains County, really different, and you know, and so on and so forth. You know, but basically we're seeing some things that are really problematic. You know, the first district currently kind of sits in here in this northeastern area. That's where a lot of our rural Black communities are. That's why in the past it's been talked about as being a Voting Rights Act district, because you know, Black voters there have been able to elect a candidate of their choice. It's basically been split in half, and some of those counties are now paired with Forsyth County, like very much further west. And then, you know, you kind of have the other half of the first district being put out with sort of the Outer Banks area. So just in general, like this is what we're seeing as one of the maps that they worked hard to make all the population equal, that they got population reports from, that they got, you know, assessed on various criteria. So this seems like a map that they're serious about, and it's a map that really, really does not reflect anything that people want. I mean, like I was saying before, you know, we had all these people in the Sandhills ask for a Sandhills district that was centered on Cumberland County. Well, in this map, Fayetteville is cut out of Cumberland County, right? Like Fayetteville is being cut out of Cumberland County. And actually, that's something that we've seen in a lot of past maps, some of the past maps that have been litigated over as partisan and racial gerrymanders. So, and then just to say, this is the other congressional map we saw sort of finalized today, saw them work on out the equal population, saw them get those reports, and they're very similar. So Mecklenburg isn't cut 4 times, but it's cut 3 times. And again, two sides of it are being paired with rural areas. One is being paired with the mountains. One's being paired with some of the Sandhills counties. Again, something that we heard people from the area say does not represent them. There, you know, Cumberland County again is split. You know, in fact, I believe that just by looking at that, even Fayetteville is not being kept whole in that map. It's being kind of split and taken and put with a bunch of other stuff. Pitt County is being split, so Greenville is being split, which is, you know, again, something we've seen is problematic. You can see there's this weird cut happening down here in the southeast, where like basically they're taking a stripe out of the middle of New Hanover County. Just, you know, just some wild stuff. And something I didn't mention on the last map, but is there and here is this, what we're looking at, which looks like sort of a packing of voters here in this, you know, Orange County, Durham, and then part of Wake probably, which I would assume goes into Raleigh. You know, that really looks like classic packing of voters there. So yeah, I mean, you know, just all the same things, all the same problems, all the same ways that they're just completely ignoring what people actually want. Again, you know, here's Tim Moore's district and looks like light color, you know, like he, you know, they're doing a lot of hard work to do what he wants, but not actually doing any work to do what anyone who lives in these places actually wants.
And it looks like that one, High Point, is split off from Guilford and connected down, which I think I remember some folks specifically.
Yeah, I mean, High Point is being split off and connected with Cabarrus County, which just, you know, I think of Cabarrus County as being sort of like a suburb of Charlotte. High Point isn't a suburb of Charlotte. But yeah, no, it's you know, these maps are real wild looking because they're not something that anyone would actually, from those areas, would actually identify. You know, and it was funny, there was actually some journalists today being like, oh, well, this is so good for rural interests because like then they can overwhelm all the cities and you know, get their, and I was like, you know, if you went to actually any of these public hearings, people in rural areas consistently said that they did not want to be paired with suburban and urban areas. They felt like when that happened, that's not actually representing their community. They want a district that actually feels like areas are being kept together. That's what people really want. In fact, I think all of the commentary that we heard from people at public hearings kind of could boil down to people want similar areas to be kept together. They don't want to be strung out into these huge districts that, go and grab a part of some random city that they feel like is nothing like where they live. People aren't thinking about it in this sort of mercenary way. They're thinking about, okay, like what's going to make us feel like we're well represented. And something like this isn't that, even for rural voters, at least as far as we've heard. And then the last thing I want to show you is this is a actual, and I know that this is like, you can't see a lot of detail here, but this is actually a state Senate map that today was similarly kind of finalized, gone through, the population was sort of equaled out, and they did like, they submit, got population and compactness reports and stuff like that out of it. So this looks to be, and we have not seen any other Republican state Senate maps as far as I know. So unless they start a new one tomorrow, which, I'm kind of thinking that this may be the one that we see coming forward as the map that they are, determined to pass. And so, people can take a closer look at this, but, what I would say is that it's clear that like not a lot of effort is being made to keep in particular, keep cities whole in this one, as far as I can tell. I think we'll have to get a closer look, and if we actually get some hearings after draft maps, I would love to hear from people what they think about a map like this, because this is the kind of situation where you really do want that community input. So we'll see, but I think we'll hopefully be able to have some time to do some closer analysis on this in the future. Just going off, like looking at like what's going on in Wake County, there's some real weird shapes in there that I don't think make a lot of sense as someone who currently lives there. But hopefully we'll get some more time to look at that and talk to you all about it. All right, I'm gonna stop sharing the screen.
Great. So thanks for walking us through those maps. So as you kind of mentioned, so far, it's been the committee chairs who are all Republicans who have been doing most of the map drawing in the public rooms. What, if anything, have we seen from Democrats on the committee or Democratic maps that have been drawn?
Generally very little. So we did see Senator Clark draw a congressional map, and that map was given an A rating by the Princeton Gerrymandering Project. I haven't taken a very close look at it, but that was the main thing I've seen him working on. I think he also started a Senate map, although I don't think that he has finished it. But generally, we have not seen Democrats doing much else. I would assume probably they are, because Republicans are in control of the process, they're kind of looking to see what Republicans are doing and maybe trying to craft some kind of response. But I think other than that, I think the other day Pricey Harrison seemed to be in there and just getting a printout of the current districts in her area. So like nothing, she wasn't actually drawing a map. She was just kind of, asking for some printouts of the current map. So we really have not seen a lot from Democrats yet. I'm assuming that will probably change as we come up on the end of this week and next week, but we've been hearing that at the end of next week is sort of when they're planning to end this drawing in total. So yeah, we'll keep an eye out for whatever Democrats are doing, and we'll keep you all updated on that, but so far we have not seen a lot from them.
Okay, great. So that kind of answers the next question of, is there anything else that you can share about what is the expected timeline? We think that, next week sometime.
Yeah. So, assuming that map drawing ends sometime next week, there's still a lot to do after that. These maps have to go up for a vote in the relevant committees. We've been told that basically it sounds like state legislative maps are going to go first and then congressional maps. And then, of course, in the committee, people can offer amendments to maps. There's been some question about whether or not like the mapping stations are going to be open so that people can draw out those amendments. So basically, like if you're trying to offer an amendment for a map, so I think I've said this before, but basically maps when they're made into bills, because they're basically treated like a regular bill. So you have to make the map into a bill. And the way that you do that is you pretty much like say, District 46, and then there's just a long string of census block numbers. And that's sort of how they make the maps into actual bills. There's usually like sort of a picture map that comes alongside that you can look at, but the official bill itself is just like a list of numbers. And so to make an amendment to something like that, obviously you also have to have like an amendment that's like a list of numbers, and you can't really figure out what those numbers are unless you are able to kind of draw the map first. So I think there's some question about whether or not there will be time to draw those amendments after we see draft maps, because obviously it's hard to draw amendment to a map that is not official yet. But yeah, so there's sort of a bit of process that's going on. I know that the chairs have said that they would like to be done by the end of October. Their official deadline is more like mid-November. I always feel like these things are going to stretch on forever because our legislators are not very good at doing anything quickly, as the current budget situation can attest. So I think that even if a map drawing ends on some official level next week, we will see the process go on for another couple weeks, if not more.
Right. Okay, great. And sort of on that note, we are joining a chorus of partner groups and a ton of folks who spoke at hearings, and we know of people have been making comments in the online portal, really, calling on this committee to hold another round of hearings once they have a draft maps for each of those chambers, each of those levels of the ballot. After they're released. So we are going to invite folks who are watching this to join us in that work. And there's a link in the description, and we'll be posting this on YouTube, and there'll be a link there as well to an action hub that we've got set up, where you can click on that link, and that will let you access our tools where you can email the entire redistricting committee. You can, with one click, send an email to everyone on the redistricting committee, and you can write an email. There's a template in there you can use, but we do encourage people to, customize that, make it your own. You don't have to use any of our language if you don't want, you can. But there's also a link where you can really easily submit a letter to the editor, calling on the redistricting committee and your legislators to advocate for more hearings. That's what people are really asking for, and that's what we need to be able to have input on the maps, is to let folks across the state take a look at what they've drafted and say, yeah, this is going to work for my community, or no, it's not. And then there's also a place where you can, in that action hub, where you can sign up for, we send a weekly newsletter where we recap again. That's sort of the first place that you can find out about calls to action or, rapid response that might be occurring in the next few weeks. So click on that action hub, do those 3 actions or whichever ones you are able to do. And we will also be having, keep a lookout in our social media. We'll be dropping a link for a meeting next week where we'll look more closely at the maps that we've seen and talk about further ways that folks can advocate for their communities.
Yeah, and those, getting those hearings after draft maps is so important. I think I spent a lot of time talking about congressional maps because the feedback that we were able to get at the public hearings mostly was pretty general, right? Because people didn't have specific maps to look at. And so they're giving us information that, was helpful sort of on that higher level. But we're not going to get as much specific information unless they are able to actually see like those state legislative maps and formulate specific responses. So those kinds of hearings after draft maps are super important. So yeah, I would really encourage you all to go to that action hub, particularly email the redistricting committee, write an LTE if you feel like you can, and of course sign up for our newsletter. We really do provide a lot of resources there. We keep you up to date with everything that's going on. And if there's any kind of rapid action that needs to be taken, we will let you know.
Great. Well, I think that just about does it for this recap. Thanks, Leica, for being there and watching everything so closely and synthesizing all that information for us. And I think we'll be back here tomorrow.
Yeah, well, thanks, Bree, for setting this up. And yeah, I'm happy to talk to you all. And of course, again, You can follow me at Lake Issue Pack on Twitter or Bree at Bree Bro on Twitter. We both have been following the map drawing to some extent and try to keep people updated there if you want to get into like the nitty gritty play-by-play of the maps.
See a lot of close-up pictures there too of your own district you can scroll through and find.
Yep, definitely.
Okay, well, thanks everyone.
Good evening.
Have a good night.
Bye.